Alessandro Torriani had it all. Billions in the bank, women at his feet, and an empire that spanned 3 continents. At 35, he had never heard the word no from a woman. Not until he met Isabela Santos, a 28-year-old florist who was about to change his life forever. What happens when a man accustomed to possessing everything encounters the one thing he cannot buy? When power meets purity, when obsession wears the mask of love, how far will a powerful man go to conquer a heart that refuses to be his? A summer rain lashed Sao Paulo as Alessandro Torriani parked his black Lamborghini in front of the Hotel Fasano. It was precisely 8 o'clock on a Friday night in March, and the Hope for All charity gala was about to begin. Alessandro adjusted his Hermes tie, observing his reflection in the car's tinted window. Perfectly coiffed black hair, an Armani suit that cost more than most cars, and the kind of smile that had conquered dozens of women across the globe. At 35, Alessandro was the youngest CEO to helm a technology empire valued at 5 billion reais. The son of Italian immigrants who had built a fortune in Brazil, he possessed everything money could buy: mansions in 3 countries, yachts, private jets, and a reputation as a relentless conqueror. He had never been in a serious relationship. Why chain himself to one woman when he could have them all? The hotel's main ballroom buzzed with socialites, entrepreneurs, and celebrities. Baccarat crystals reflected the light from French chandeliers as waiters circulated with glasses of Dom Perignon. Alessandro greeted a few acquaintances with his calculated charm, but his attention was suddenly captured by something unusual. A small alcove decorated with breathtaking floral arrangements. These were not the expensive, predictable displays he was used to seeing at such events. They were unique compositions, at once wild and delicate, that seemed to possess a life of their own. Golden sunflowers danced with deep red roses, while exotic foliage created a perfect contrast. There was soul in these creations. Who did these arrangements? He asked Marcia Delacroix, the event's organizer, a 52-year-old socialite he had known since childhood. A florist recommended by the local church, Marcia replied, adjusting her diamond earrings. Isabella something. A simple girl, but she has a gift, don't you think? Alessandro didn't answer. His eyes had found the creator of the arrangements. Isabela Santos was kneeling beside a large vase, delicately adjusting the final details of a composition. She wore a simple, unbranded navy blue dress that highlighted her sun-kissed golden brown skin. Her chestnut hair fell in natural waves over her shoulders, held back by a simple, elastic band. She wore no jewelry, save for a small, golden crucifix at her neck. She was 28, but her brown eyes held the depth of someone who understood life beyond mere appearances. When she stood up and smiled at one of the organizers, Alessandro felt a strange stirring in his chest. It wasn't just physical attraction, though Isabella was undeniably beautiful. It was something deeper, a genuine curiosity he hadn't felt for anyone in years. He waited for her to finish her work and then approached with his usual confidence. Your arrangements are extraordinary, he said, flashing his best smile. I've never seen anything like them. Isabella looked at him and smiled politely, but her eyes held none of the dazzled admiration he was accustomed to seeing. Thank you, sir. Alessandro Torriani He extended his hand, expecting the usual flicker of recognition. Isabela Santos, she replied, shaking his hand briefly. I work with nature. She provides all the beauty. Modesty doesn't suit such talent, Alessandro insisted, using the tone that always worked. How about we have dinner tomorrow? I know a place. No, thank you. The answer was swift and final. I need to finish up here and get home. Alessandro blinked, confused. It was the first time in 15 years that a woman had rejected him on the first attempt. Perhaps you didn't hear me correctly. I'm Alessandro Torriani of Torriani Tech. I can take you to the best restaurants in São Paulo, Paris, New York. Isabella stopped packing her tools and faced him directly. I heard you perfectly, Mr. Torriani. And my answer is still no. I'm sure there are many women here who would be delighted with your invitation. She picked up her simple toolbox and walked toward the exit, leaving Alessandro standing in the middle of the ballroom, his mouth slightly agape. Marcia Delacroix approached, laughing. First time I've ever seen a woman say no to you, Alessandro. How interesting. But Alessandro wasn't paying attention to Marcia. His eyes followed Isabella as she said her goodbyes and walked out of the hotel. There was something about her that intrigued him profoundly. The way she had spoken to him, without scorn, without arrogance, but with a firmness he had never encountered. Through the hotel's glass doors, Alessandro watched her get into an old but well-maintained white Fiat Uno. She drove down the avenue and disappeared into the rainy night. For the rest of the evening, Alessandro tried to focus on business conversations, but his mind kept returning to those brown eyes and to the no that still echoed in his ears. The next morning, Alessandro awoke in his Villa Olympia penthouse with an unfamiliar feeling. Instead of thinking about business deals or the Swedish blonde who had tried to seduce him at the after party, his mind was fixed on the florist in the navy blue dress. Ridiculous, he muttered to himself, sipping an Italian espresso on the balcony with its panoramic view of the city. She's just another woman. But he couldn't shake the memory of how naturally she had rejected him. There had been no pretense, no games, just an honest, direct no. Alessandro called his personal assistant, Roberto Mendes, a 45-year-old man who had worked for him for over a decade. Roberto, I need information on someone. Isabela Santos, a florist. She worked the event last night. Is there a problem, Mr. Torriani? No, just professional curiosity. 2 hours later, Roberto called back. Isabela Santos, 28 years old, born and raised in Tatuapé, lives alone in a rented apartment in Penha. She owns a small flower shop called Pétalas em Sonhos, Petals and Dreams, on Rua das Flores, near the municipal market. She has a degree in floral design from a technical college and has owned the business for 5 years. No outstanding debts. No known serious relationships. Attends São Benedito Church on Sundays. Alessandro mentally filed away every detail. A simple, hardworking woman with no complications. The exact opposite of every socialite and executive he knew. On Monday, he decided to act. Petals and Dreams was a small corner shop in a working-class neighborhood. The facade was painted white with sea green accents, and large pots of colorful flowers decorated the entrance. Through the display window, Alessandro saw Isabella arranging a bouquet of white roses, her focus absolute. She wore faded jeans and a simple t-shirt, but there was an inherent elegance in her movements that no designer label could replicate. Alessandro entered, the small bell on the door chiming cheerfully. Isabella looked up, and for a moment, he saw genuine surprise on her face. Mr. Torriani, what are you doing here? I came to buy flowers, he replied, looking around the small shop. The space was warm and inviting, alive with life and color, and filled with the sweet, fresh scent that only real flowers possess. For my mother, she adores red roses. It was a lie. His mother had died when he was 15, and she had always preferred orchids. But Isabella didn't need to know that. What kind of roses? We have several varieties. Isabella walked to the cooler, where she kept the most delicate blooms. These are Colombian, very fragrant. These are domestic, more resilient. The Colombian ones, Alessandro answered, watching her work. There was something hypnotic in the way she handled the flowers, as if each one were precious. While Isabella prepared the bouquet, Alessandro tried to make conversation. How long have you had the shop? 5 years. I started with a small inheritance from my grandmother and a big dream. She smiled, but kept her eyes on her work. And you? Have you always worked in technology? Since I was 20, I started from scratch, like my father. This was true, though Alessandro's scratch had included a small family fortune and influential contacts. It must be gratifying to build something of your own, Isabella commented, wrapping the bouquet in brown craft paper with a simple ribbon. It is, but sometimes I wonder if all the pressure is worth it. Isabella looked at him directly for the first time since he'd entered the shop. Money doesn't bring happiness, Mr. Torriani, only comfort. And are you happy? Yes. The answer came without hesitation. I wake up every day doing what I love, surrounded by beauty. I have few friends, but they are true. It's a simple life, but it has purpose. Alessandro paid for the flowers, 50 reais, an amount he would spend on a single glass of wine at his favorite restaurants. Thank you for the flowers, Isabella. I hope to see you again. If you need more flowers, I'll be here, she replied politely. Alessandro left the shop with the bouquet in his hands and a strange feeling in his chest. For the first time in years, he had met someone who seemed genuinely happy, without needing luxury, power, or recognition. He tossed the flowers into a trash can as soon as he reached his car. In the days that followed, Alessandro couldn't concentrate on work. During important meetings, his mind would wander to the small flower shop in Penha. He began inventing excuses to drive through the neighborhood, always hoping for a glimpse of her. The following Friday, he returned to Petals and Dreams, under the pretext of needing floral decorations for his office. I need something sophisticated but discreet, he said, lying once again. Isabella served him with the same professional courtesy as before, but Alessandro noticed a faint unease in her eyes. I can suggest arrangements with white lilies and green foliage. They're elegant in a corporate setting. Perfect. And how about we have dinner, after you close up, to discuss the details of the arrangement? Isabella stopped handling the flowers and looked at him. Mr. Torriani, with all due respect, I think we need to be clear about something. I sell flowers, that is all. If you wish to hire my professional services, I will be happy to assist you, but I have no interest in personal relationships with my clients. The rejection was polite, but firm. Alessandro felt a mixture of frustration and admiration. No woman had ever set such clear boundaries with him. I understand. Just flowers, then. But as he left the shop with a corporate arrangement he would never use, Alessandro Torriani made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. If Isabela Santos couldn't be won over by conventional methods, he would have to be more creative, much more creative. Alessandro Torriani did not sleep that night. Lying in his king-sized bed with 1,500 thread-count Egyptian cotton sheets, he stared at the ceiling of his master suite as the city of São Paulo pulsed 17 floors below. It was 3 in the morning on a Saturday, and for the first time in years, his mind wasn't occupied with mergers, acquisitions, or corporate strategies. He was thinking about Isabela Santos. Ridiculous, he murmured to himself, getting up and walking to the panoramic window. The nocturnal view of Villa Olympia stretched before him like a map of lights. But all Alessandro could see were the brown eyes that had rejected him so naturally. On Monday, he arrived at the Torriani tech offices in the World Trade Center with renewed determination. If Isabella didn't respond to direct invitations, perhaps he needed a more subtle approach. Alessandro summoned Roberto, his assistant. I want you to find out everything about Isabela Santos's flower shop. Suppliers, clients, financial situation, contracts, everything. May I ask why, sir? Business curiosity, Alessandro lied. Perhaps it's an investment opportunity. Roberto returned 2 hours later with a detailed report. The flower shop is stable, but not thriving. She has small contracts with a few local churches, funeral homes, and minor events. Her biggest client is Delacroix Events, which hires her sporadically. She pays 2,500 reais a month in rent, has one part-time employee, and her margins are tight. She's honest and punctual, but her growth is limited by a lack of capital. Alessandro smiled. It was exactly what he needed to hear. On Tuesday, he put his plan into action. Wearing a charcoal gray Brioni suit and discreetly driving a black BMW instead of his flashy Lamborghini, he parked 2 blocks from Isabella's shop. At 9 o'clock sharp, he walked into Petals and Dreams. Isabella was helping an elderly woman choose flowers for a home altar. She wore a simple floral dress, her hair tied back in a ponytail. When she saw Alessandro, her expression was one of surprise that quickly shifted to polite resignation. Good morning, Mr. Torriani. How can I help you today? My company is expanding its social outreach activities. It was a half-truth. Torriani Tech did host events, but they always hired the most expensive and renowned florists in the city. Isabella finished with her customer and turned to him with professional interest. What kind of events? How many people? How often? Monthly events for approximately 200 people. Executive dinners, product launches, meetings with investors. Alessandro improvised with ease. I need someone reliable and creative. Isabella's eyes lit up. A contract of that size would mean financial stability for years. I can prepare some proposals. When would the first event be? Next Friday. A dinner for international investors. Alessandro knew he was lying through his teeth, but the contained excitement in Isabella's eyes was worth any deception. Sophisticated, yet welcoming, she had said. A theme. And where will it be held? Alessandro's mind raced. In the ballroom of my building. I'll make a point of showing you the space. Isabella hesitated for a moment. Would it be possible to schedule a site visit? Of course. How about this afternoon at 5? Perfect. Alessandro left the flower shop with his heart pounding. He had exactly 6 hours to turn his lie into reality. He immediately called his building's administration. I need to reserve the ballroom for Friday night. A pause. Yes, I know it cost 20,000 for the evening. You can put it on my account. Next, he dialed the French chef of his favorite restaurant. Henri, I need you to prepare a dinner for 50 people on Friday. No, not 200. Change of plans. The full tasting menu. At 5 o'clock that afternoon, Alessandro was waiting in the lobby of his residential tower when he saw Isabella pull up in her white Uno. She had swapped her floral dress for black trousers and a white blouse, carrying a simple portfolio with samples and a notebook. Punctual, as always, Alessandro commented, greeting her as they stepped into the private elevator that ascended to the ballroom on the 25th floor. Punctuality is fundamental in business, Isabella replied, maintaining a professional distance. The ballroom was genuinely impressive, with a panoramic view of the city, soaring ceilings, built-in crystal cabinets, and an elegant, neutral decor that allowed for complete customization. It was a blank canvas of immense potential. Isabella walked through the space, taking notes and measuring areas with a professional tape measure. How many tables? She asked, her focus absolute. 10 tables of 5, Alessandro answered, admiring the seriousness with which she worked. Buffet or French service? Full French service. The chef is from Paris. Isabella continued her notes, inquiring about lighting, power outlets, and the setup schedule. Alessandro answered everything with surprising knowledge. After all, he had organized dozens of real events. I can present 3 different proposals by tomorrow, Isabella said, packing away her materials. One more classic, one contemporary, and one with a tropical touch. Excellent. And how about we discuss the details over dinner? Isabella stopped what she was doing and looked at him directly. Mr. Torriani, I've already made it clear that I maintain strictly professional relationships with clients. It would be a working dinner, Alessandro countered, his tone at its most convincing. To discuss the timeline, suppliers, logistical details. Besides, I know some restaurants that could also become your clients. Isabella hesitated. The prospect of new business was tempting. Business only? Business only. Very well, she conceded, but I choose the place. Alessandro smiled to himself. Of course. Isabella chose a family-run Italian pizzeria in Bexiga, a 15-minute drive from her flower shop. It was a simple, cozy place with wooden tables, candles in wine bottles, and the unmistakable aroma of fresh dough. Alessandro arrived promptly at 8 o'clock on Wednesday evening, wearing dark jeans and a white dress shirt, no tie. He was trying to appear less intimidating, more approachable. Isabella was already seated at a corner table, studying her proposals. She had chosen a simple, moss green dress that highlighted her brown eyes, and Alessandro had to force himself not to stare. Sorry I'm late, he lied, though he was perfectly on time. No problem. I've already ordered a margarita pizza for us to share. I hope you don't mind. Alessandro, a man accustomed to the world's finest restaurants, had never imagined that sharing a simple pizza could feel more satisfying than any Michelin-starred dinner. So, the proposals, Isabella began, opening her portfolio with professional enthusiasm. For an hour, she presented her 3 ideas with impressive passion and technical knowledge. Alessandro asked intelligent questions and made pertinent suggestions, showing a genuine interest in her work. You really understand decor, Isabella commented, surprised. Most executives just want something pretty without getting involved in the details. I've learned that the details make all the difference, Alessandro replied. And for the first time, he wasn't lying. As the evening wore on, The conversation naturally drifted to more personal topics. How did you decide to work with flowers? Alessandro asked, genuinely curious. My grandmother had a small garden at her house. I used to spend Sunday afternoons helping her tend to the plants. Isabella's eyes lit up with the memory. She used to say that flowers were God's way of showing that there was still beauty in the world, even in the most difficult times. And was she right? She was. After she passed away, I used the small inheritance she left me to open the flower shop. It's my way of continuing to spread the beauty she taught me to see. Alessandro felt an unfamiliar stirring in his chest. It's been years since I've heard someone speak with such sincerity about purpose, about something bigger than money or success. And you? Isabella asked. Why technology? Alessandro hesitated. He was used to giving canned answers about corporate vision and expanding markets. My father was an Italian immigrant. He came to Brazil with nothing, worked in construction for years. When I was a child, he always said that education and technology were the only things no one could ever take from me. It was the rawest truth Alessandro had told in years. I think, I think I built the company to prove him right. Isabella watched him with a new attentiveness. He must be proud. He died when I was 25, a heart attack. Alessandro lowered his gaze. Sometimes I wonder if he would approve of what I've become. And what have you become? The question hung in the silence. Rich, powerful, lonely, a womanizer, financially successful, but happy? Alessandro didn't have an answer. When they left the pizzeria at 11 o'clock, a different kind of intimacy existed between them. Not romantic, but human. For the first time, Alessandro had shown genuine vulnerability to a woman. Thank you for the working dinner, Isabella said, a small smile on her face, and for the conversation. You're different than I imagined. Better or worse? More real. Alessandro walked Isabella to her car and waited until she had started the engine before waving goodbye. But on the way home, his determination returned. Isabella had lowered her guard slightly, but she still saw him only as a client. He needed something more dramatic, more definitive. On Thursday morning, he put the second phase of his plan into action. He called Marcia Delacroix, a powerful event planner. Marcia, I need a favor. I want you to cancel all future contracts with the florist Isabela Santos. Alessandro, that's bizarre, even for you. Why? Let's just call it a market strategy. And while you're at it, recommend my new decorating service to all your clients. What decorating company do you have? I don't have one yet, but I will by tomorrow. He hung up and immediately dialed his right-hand man, Roberto. I want you to register a decorating and events company today. Torriani Ambientes. Hire the 3 best decorators in São Paulo. Offer them salaries they can't refuse. I want them to work exclusively for me. Sir, this will cost a fortune and makes no strategic sense. Roberto, you've known me for 10 years. Have you ever seen me make an irrational decision? Roberto hesitated. No, sir. Then trust me now. On Friday morning at 8 o'clock, Isabella's phone rang. Isabella, it's Marcia Delacroix. I have some bad news. I have to cancel all of our future contracts. My clients are now demanding integrated decor, not just floral arrangements. I'm so sorry. Isabella hung up the phone in a state of shock. Marcia was responsible for 40% of her income. Without Delacroix events, her shop, Petals and Dreams, wouldn't survive. 2 hours later, Alessandro walked into the flower shop to find Isabella visibly distraught. Isabella, is everything all right? She looked at him with tear-filled eyes, trying to maintain her professional composure. Everything is fine, Mr. Torriani. The proposals for your event are ready. That's wonderful. And I have some other news. I've just opened a decorating company, Torriani Ambientes. I'd like to offer you an exclusive partnership as our floral supplier. Isabella blinked, confused. A partnership? A 2-year contract. A fixed monthly payment of 20,000 plus commission per event. All materials provided, transportation included, and a support team. You would only be responsible for the creative design. It was a financially irrefutable offer, more money than she earned in 6 months. I need to think about it. Of course, Alessandro said smoothly, but the offer expires on Monday. He left the shop, knowing he had created a situation where she had no real choice. It was pure manipulation. But he had lost control of his own feelings. He wanted Isabela Santos at any cost, and he was willing to reshape his entire life to have her. Isabella spent the entire weekend in a state of emotional turmoil she had never experienced. Sitting in the small living room of her rented apartment, she alternated between her calculator, her overdue bills, and Alessandro Torriani's tempting proposal. 20,000 a month. It was 4 times what she managed to profit in her best months. With that money, she could pay off all her debts, renovate the shop, maybe even buy her own apartment. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. But something deep in her heart felt wrong. Alessandro Torriani was handsome, intelligent, and had shown a vulnerable side over dinner. But he was also far too persistent. He appeared too often, and this proposal had materialized at the exact moment she needed it most. It was too much of a coincidence to be true. On Monday morning, at 9 o'clock sharp, Alessandro entered Petals and Dreams, dressed in a navy blue Armani suit and carrying a bouquet of white peonies, the rarest and most expensive flowers Isabella sold. To celebrate our partnership, he said, extending the bouquet. Isabella accepted the flowers, but she didn't smile. Mr. Torriani, I accept your proposal, but I want to make it clear that this is strictly professional. Nothing more than work. Naturally. Roberto will be here tomorrow with the contracts. And, she added, her gaze steady, I'd like to meet your decorating team and see the Torriani Ambientes office. Alessandro hesitated for only a fraction of a second. Of course. How about Thursday? Perfect. On Wednesday, Alessandro worked frantically to give his lie credibility. He rented a stylish office in Villa Maddalena, hired a receptionist, bought expensive furniture, and hung diplomas and certifications on the walls that Roberto had procured through questionable contacts. The 3 decorators he had hired, Marina Goldstein, famous for her designs for the city's elite, Carlos Mendonça, a specialist in corporate events, and Fernanda Lopez, an expert in luxury weddings, were still perplexed by the irrefutable offer they had received. Alessandro, this makes no economic sense, Marina said during their briefing. You're paying us 3 times the market rate, and we already have our own established companies. And you created this company overnight, Carlos added, flipping through the contracts. What's the real objective? Alessandro adjusted his tie, uncomfortable under the scrutiny. Investment diversification. The tech market is volatile. Fernanda laughed. Alessandro, I've known you for 5 years. You don't know the difference between a table arrangement and a centerpiece. Why are you really doing this? Because I fell in love, Alessandro confessed, surprising even himself with the honesty. And because she's the only woman who isn't impressed by my money. The three decorators exchanged knowing glances. So you created an entire company to win over a woman? Marina asked, incredulous. Basically. That's madness, Carlos said. Or is it the most romantic gesture I've ever seen? Fernanda retorted, smiling. As long as she never finds out the truth. A chill ran down Alessandro's spine. The truth. Sooner or later, Isabella would discover his manipulations. And when she did, on Thursday, Isabella arrived at the Torriani Ambiente's office, wearing her best professional outfit, a navy blue pencil skirt and matching blazer she had bought on sale 2 years prior. Alessandro greeted her personally in the lobby. Welcome to Torriani Ambientes, he said, leading her to the elevator. The 10th floor office was impressive. Modern decor, a city view, and meeting rooms equipped with state-of-the-art technology. Isabella walked through the space with genuine admiration. Marina, Carlos, Fernanda, I'd like to introduce Isabela Santos, our new floral partner, Alessandro announced as they entered the main conference room. Isabella greeted each of the decorators, who received her with professional warmth. For 2 hours, they discussed styles, trends, suppliers, and timelines. Isabella demonstrated a technical knowledge that impressed even these seasoned professionals. You have an exceptional artistic vision, Marina commented sincerely. Your proposals are both creative and viable. Thank you. I've learned that flowers should complement the environment, not compete with it. After the meeting, Alessandro invited Isabella to lunch at a nearby restaurant. To celebrate the start of our partnership, he justified. This time, Isabella didn't refuse. Seated at a discreet table in the Japanese restaurant Kinoshita, Alessandro watched as Isabella tried sushi for the very first time. It's different than I imagined, she said, cautiously chewing a piece of salmon. Softer. It's my first time. Japanese food always seemed too expensive to just try. A pang of guilt struck Alessandro. For him, dining at this restaurant was routine. For her, it was a unique experience. Isabella, can I ask you a personal question? She regarded him cautiously. That depends on the question. Why have you never married a beautiful, intelligent, hardworking woman like you? Isabella put down her chopsticks and sighed. I've had relationships, but the men, they always wanted to change me. They said I dreamed too much, that I should be more ambitious, find a real job, as if creating beauty wasn't work enough. They didn't understand you. No, and I don't want someone who sees me as a renovation project. Isabella looked at him directly. And you? A successful, handsome man, 35 and single. There must be a reason. Alessandro hesitated. How could he explain that he had never felt for anyone what he felt for her? I never met someone who made me want to change. Change how? To be a better person? Isabella studied him in silence for a few seconds. Alessandro, may I call you Alessandro? He nodded. Alessandro, you seem like a man accustomed to getting everything he wants. That worries me. Why? Because I'm not something to be acquired. I am someone who must choose. The conversation was cut short by Alessandro's phone ringing. It was Roberto. Excuse me? Alessandro answered. Roberto? Sir, we have a problem. Delacroix Events is telling everyone you offered her money to cancel her contracts with the florist. The news is spreading through the business community. The color drained from Alessandro's face. I'll call you back. He hung up, but Isabella had noticed his expression shift. Trouble at work? Nothing important. But it was important, terribly important. If Isabella discovered his manipulation before he could make her fall for him, he would lose any chance he had. That night, Alessandro couldn't sleep. He paced his penthouse like a caged animal, trying to find a way to control the damage. At 3 in the morning, he made a desperate decision. He called Roberto. I want you to buy the building where Isabella's flower shop is located. Sir, you heard me. Buy the entire building. Offer whatever it takes. Alessandro, this is... Roberto stopped. He knew his boss well enough to recognize when he was determined beyond reason. How long do I have? A week, maybe 2. Do it in 3 days. On Friday, Isabella was working cheerfully in her flower shop when she received a call that would change everything. Miss Santos, this is Mr. Henrique Almeida, a real estate attorney. The gentleman who purchased your building would like to renew all the rental contracts. Can we meet on Monday to discuss the new terms? Isabella was confused. What gentleman? Did Mr. Ribeiro sell the building? He sold it yesterday. The new owner wants to meet all the tenants personally. Isabella hung up the phone with a sinking feeling. Too many coincidences had been happening in her life since she'd met Alessandro Torriani. On Saturday morning, she decided to do something she had never done before. She investigated. She went to Mr. Jose's flower shop, 3 blocks away, where she always bought a few specific varieties. Mr. Jose, do you know anyone from Delacroix Events? Of course, my dear. Marcia Delacroix has been buying flowers here for 10 years. Why do you ask? She canceled all her contracts with me last week. Said her clients now demand complete decorating packages. Mr. Jose frowned. That's strange. Marcia was just here on Tuesday, talking about some fellow named Alessandro Torriani. Said he offered her a fortune to stop working with you. She was furious. Said she'd never seen anything like it. Isabella's blood ran cold. Alessandro Torriani? That's the one. She said he's completely obsessed with a florist and is using his money to manipulate her life. Isabella left Mr. Jose's shop in a state of shock. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together in a terrifying way. Alessandro had sabotaged her contracts with Marcia Delacroix. Alessandro had created a company overnight. Alessandro had made an irresistible offer exactly when she needed it most. And now, someone had bought her building. Sitting in her car, Isabella closed her eyes and tried to process the sheer scale of the manipulation. Alessandro Torriani wasn't just interested in her. He was systematically taking control of her life. The question that terrified her was how far he was willing to go, and why. Even knowing all this, a part of her still felt something for him. On Sunday, during Mass at St. Benedict's Church, Isabella prayed for guidance. Father Miguel, who had known her since she was a child, noticed her troubled spirit. My child, you seem worried. Father, what do you do when you discover that someone you trusted has betrayed you, but you still have feelings for them? Father Miguel looked at her with paternal wisdom. Isabella, forgiveness does not mean accepting manipulation. Sometimes, loving someone means having the courage to confront them with the truth. On Monday morning, Isabella prepared for the confrontation that would change everything. She put on her best black dress, styled her hair with care, and drove to the offices of Torriani Environments. It was time to find out who Alessandro Torriani really was. And it was time for him to find out who Isabela Santos really was. Alessandro Torriani was in his office, reviewing fictitious contracts, when Roberto entered with a worried expression. Alessandro, I need to tell you something. Marcia Delacroix is telling half the city that you paid her to sabotage the florist. And there's more. Isabela Santos is downstairs asking to see you. She looks determined. Alessandro's blood ran cold. It was Monday, 10 in the morning, and the moment he had dreaded most had arrived. Send her up, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Alessandro, does she know? Probably everything. Roberto shook his head. I warned you this would go wrong. Just send her up, Roberto. 5 minutes later, Isabela Santos walked into Alessandro's office. Dressed in black, she looked like a lawyer heading to court. Her normally soft brown eyes shone with a resolve Alessandro had never seen. Good morning, Mr. Torriani, she said, closing the door behind her. Isabella, what a pleasant surprise. Please, have a seat. I'd rather stand. She crossed her arms and faced him squarely. I have a few questions for you. Alessandro felt his palms begin to sweat. Of course, anything. How long has Torriani Environments existed? The question was sharp and precise. Alessandro hesitated. A few weeks. And why did you create it? He rose from his chair, trying to buy time. As I explained, business diversification. Liar? Isabella's voice cut through the air like a blade. You created it for me. The silence that followed was deafening. Alessandro struggled to find words, but she continued. Did you pay Marcia Delacroix to cancel my contracts? Isabella, I can explain. Yes or no, Alessandro? Yes. Isabella closed her eyes for a moment, as if absorbing a physical blow. Did you buy the building where my flower shop is? How did you find out? Is that a yes? It's a yes. Isabella walked to the window, turning her back to him. He could see her shoulders trembling slightly. You created a situation where I had no choice but to accept your proposal. You made me think I was lucky, when in reality, I was being manipulated. Isabella, please, let me explain. She spun around, and Alessandro saw tears in her eyes. Explain what? That you see me as an object that can be bought? That my independence, my work, my entire life are just obstacles for you to overcome? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Isabella shouted, losing her composure for the first time. What do you call someone who uses money and power to control another person's life? Alessandro moved toward her, but she flinched back. Don't come near me. Isabella, I fell in love with you. This isn't love. The tears now streamed freely down her face. Love is respect, trust, free choice. What you did was, it was what? It was harassment, economic harassment. The words hit Alessandro like punches. He had never thought of his actions that way. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. Isabella wiped her tears with the back of her hand. The harassment made me question my own ability, my intuition. It made me feel grateful for crumbs that were actually traps. Alessandro sat down heavily in his chair, running his hands through his hair. Isabella, I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Alessandro, you sabotaged my business, created a fake company, and bought my building. Those aren't mistakes. That's a systematic campaign of manipulation. But it worked, didn't it? He said, his voice desperate. We grew closer. You started to get to know the real me. I got to know a lie, Isabella shot back. Every moment we spent together was built on manipulation. That conversation at the pizzeria, when you opened up about your father, was that an act too? No, that was real. My feelings for you are real. How can I possibly know that? How can I trust anything you say? Alessandro stood and walked toward her again. Because I'm telling you the truth now. Only because you got caught. If I hadn't investigated, you would have kept lying indefinitely. Maybe, Alessandro admitted, the honesty surprising them both. Maybe because I didn't know how to stop without losing you. Isabella stared at him in disbelief. You really believe you own me, don't you? That I'm something you can either lose or win. That's not it. It's exactly it. Isabella grabbed her handbag. Alessandro, you are a smart, successful, powerful man, but you don't understand the first thing about love. Then teach me. The desperate plea in his voice made her pause at the door. Teach me how to love you the right way, he continued. No lies, no manipulation. Just give me one chance to start over. Isabella turned around slowly. Start over? You've already destroyed my trust. How could we possibly start over from that? From scratch? No money, no power, no advantages. Just Alessandro and Isabella. Two people getting to know each other. Alessandro thought for a long moment. Let me work to earn it back. Alessandro, you don't get it. This isn't just about trust. It's about who you are as a person. Someone who is capable of doing what you did. People can change, Isabella, he interrupted. You yourself made me want to be different. Wanting isn't enough. Then what is? Isabella studied him for a long moment. She saw genuine desperation in his eyes, a vulnerability that couldn't be faked. But she also saw the man who had manipulated her entire life for weeks. Proof, she said finally. What kind of proof? Undo it all. Dissolve the company. Sell the building back to the old owner. Stop interfering in my life. Go back to being just Alessandro Torriani of Torriani Tech. And let me be just Isabela Santos of Petals and Dreams. And then maybe we can meet like two normal people and see if there's anything real between us. Alessandro felt a mix of hope and terror. And what if there's nothing? Then at least you'll have learned that not everything can be bought. He nodded slowly. How much time do you need? I don't know. Maybe months, maybe years, maybe never. She held his gaze. Are you willing to risk it? Alessandro thought of his life before Isabella. Professional success, empty relationships, a profound loneliness he masked with acquisitions and power. Then he thought of the possibility of losing her forever. Yes, he said, I'm willing to risk it. Isabella nodded and walked toward the door. Isabella, Alessandro called out. She stopped without turning around. Why are you giving me this chance after everything I've done? She was silent for a few seconds. Because I believe there's a good man underneath all those terrible actions. And because, her voice trembled slightly, because I felt something real in that pizzeria too. She left the room, leaving Alessandro alone with the weight of his choices. Over the next 2 weeks, Alessandro kept his word. He dissolved Torriani environments, paid out millions in severance to the decorators, and sold Isabella's building back to the original owner for less than he had paid. He personally apologized to Marcia Delacroix and offered to compensate Isabella for her losses. Isabella refused any financial compensation. I want to rebuild on my own merit, she told him during a cold but civil phone call. I understand. Alessandro? Yes. Thank you for undoing everything. I know it wasn't easy. It was the easiest and the hardest thing I've ever done. Isabella didn't reply, but she didn't hang up immediately either. How is the flower shop? Alessandro asked. Surviving. I've landed a few small contracts. Nothing like before, but it's honest. I'm glad to hear it. Another silence. Alessandro? Yes? Did you learn anything from all this? He thought carefully before answering. I learned that loving someone means wanting them to be happy, even if it's not with you. And I learned that I'm capable of being a much worse person than I ever imagined. And a better one, too, Isabella said softly. How so? You could have kept lying. You could have used your power to silence me. But you chose the truth, and you chose to make amends. That has to count for something. Alessandro felt a spark of hope. Isabella? Yes? Can I? Can I call you sometime? Just to see how you are? A long pause. Once a week, she said finally. Thursday nights. Thank you. After she hung up, Alessandro looked out his penthouse window at the city he had always dominated. For the first time in years, he felt small and vulnerable. But also, for the first time in years, he felt hopeful. Maybe true love wasn't about conquering. Maybe it was about deserving. 6 months after the confrontation that changed everything, Alessandro Torriani was a different man. It wasn't just on the outside, though he rarely wore expensive suits now, preferring jeans and simple shirts. The change was much deeper. Every Thursday, at 8 o'clock in the evening, he would call Isabella. The conversations lasted 15 minutes, sometimes less, filled with talk of work, the weather, books, and films, anything and everything except their feelings. Alessandro had learned not to push, not to interpret every silence as hope or every laugh as a promise. He was learning patience. Torriani Tech continued to thrive under his leadership, but Alessandro had completely changed his approach to business. He had created a microcredit program for small entrepreneurs, established more humane work policies for his employees, and become genuinely involved in social projects, not for marketing, but out of conviction. Roberto noticed the transformation daily. Alessandro, did you really cancel the meeting with the Japanese investors to go to a bakery opening in Capão Redondo? He asked one Thursday in September, his voice laced with disbelief. The bakery is financed by our microcredit program, Alessandro replied calmly. It's more important. Are you all right? Alessandro smiled. I'm learning what truly matters. That night, as always, he called Isabella punctually at 8. Hello, Isabella. Hello, Alessandro. The familiar, cautious greeting. How was your week? He asked. Intense. We launched 3 new businesses through the microcredit program. A bakery, a mechanics shop, and a beauty salon. That's wonderful. It must be gratifying to see people achieving their dreams. It's a different kind of satisfaction than any I've ever known, he admitted, then paused. And you? How was your week? Good. I landed a contract with a boutique hotel in Villa Maddalena. Weekly arrangements for the lobby and restaurant. Isabella, that's fantastic. That's a huge client. It is, she said, and this time I got it on my own merit. Alessandro caught the subtle reference to their past, but didn't comment. You deserve all the success, Isabella. A comfortable silence settled between them. Alessandro? Yes? Can I ask you a personal question? His heart hammered against his ribs. Of course. Are you seeing anyone? The question caught him completely off guard. In 6 months, no woman had held his interest. He hadn't even tried. No, he said. And you? No, me neither. Another silence, this one heavy with unspoken meaning. Why do you ask? Alessandro ventured. Curiosity, Isabella replied, but there was something more in her voice. Isabella? Yes. Do you ever think about us? About what might have been if I had done things differently from the start? A long pause stretched between them. Sometimes, she admitted softly. Alessandro closed his eyes, a wave of equal parts hope and fear washing over him. I think about it every day. Alessandro, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pressure you. It's just, it's just what? It's just that 6 months of talking to you, every single week, has made me realize that what I feel for you hasn't faded. In fact, it's grown, but in a different way. It's more mature. Isabella didn't respond immediately. How is it different? Before, I wanted to possess you. Now I just want you to be happy, even if it's not with me. And what if I said that maybe I could be happy with you? Alessandro's heart stopped. I'd say I don't deserve that chance, but that I would give everything I have to earn it. Alessandro? Yes? How about we meet? To talk? In person? Alessandro almost dropped the phone. When? Where? Whatever you want. Isabella laughed, the first genuine, carefree laugh he had heard from her in months. How about Saturday afternoon? Praça da República, 3 o'clock? I'll be there. Alessandro? Yes? Don't bring flowers. He laughed too. I promise. On Saturday, Alessandro arrived at Praça da República 15 minutes early. He wore dark jeans, a simple white shirt, and sneakers. He looked like an ordinary man waiting for someone special. Isabella appeared at precisely 3 o'clock, walking from the direction of the metro. She wore a mustard yellow dress he had never seen before, her hair loose and swaying in the gentle September breeze. She was more beautiful than he remembered. Hi, she said, stopping a few feet away. They simply looked at each other for a few seconds, measuring the impact of seeing each other again. You look different, Isabella observed. Better or worse? Different, she said, but real. They walked to a bench under the shade of a large tree. The square was bustling with families enjoying the weekend, children playing, and street vendors selling popcorn and cotton candy. Thank you for agreeing to see me, Alessandro said. Thank you for keeping your word. I know it wasn't easy to undo everything. It was the hardest and most necessary thing I've ever done. Isabella turned to face him fully. Alessandro, I need you to understand something. Even if we decide to try again, it won't be like before. I can't just forget what happened. I don't want you to forget. I want it to be a constant reminder for me of the man I never want to be again. And what man do you want to be? Alessandro thought carefully. I want to be the man you deserve. Someone who respects you, who supports you without trying to control you, who celebrates your independence instead of seeing it as an obstacle. That sounds very nice in theory. And in practice, he continued, meeting her gaze, in practice, it means that if you want to try again, we do it your way, at your pace, with your rules. Isabella smiled for the first time. And what if one of my rules is that we split everything 50-50? No expensive restaurants, luxury hotels, or extravagant gifts. Then we'll eat pizza and watch movies at home. And if I say I want to keep my flower shop exactly as it is, without your help or interference, then I'll be your most ordinary customer, buying flowers only when I truly need them. And if I say I need time to trust you again, months, maybe years, Alessandra looked directly into her eyes. Then I will wait, for as long as it takes. Isabella studied his face, searching for any sign of impatience or falsehood. She found none. Why, Alessandro? Why are you willing to do all of this? Because I've learned that true love isn't about having, it's about giving. And because he hesitated, then went on. Because you made me want to be a better person. and that doesn't depend on you loving me back. Isabella felt tears welling in her eyes. Alessandro, I need to tell you something. What is it? I missed you too. Over these 6 months, even when I was angry, even when I was hurt, I missed you. Alessandro closed his eyes, letting her words sink in. And what does that mean? It means that maybe we can try. Slowly, very carefully. Slow is perfect for me. Isabella held out her hand. Alessandro took it gently, as if it were made of glass. Then let's try again. Alessandro and Isabella, two people meeting for the very first time. It's a pleasure to meet you, Isabela Santos. It's a pleasure to meet you, Alessandro Torriani. They sat on the bench, holding hands, watching the world go by around them. There was no rush, no pressure, just two people who had walked through the fire of truth and chosen to try again. Isabella? Yes? May I ask you out? What kind of invitation is it? To get some ice cream at that shop on the corner. I'll pay for mine, you pay for yours. Isabella laughed, a loud, beautiful sound that was the sweetest music Alessandro had heard in months. I accept, Mr. Torriani. They stood up from the bench, still hand in hand. As they walked toward the ice cream shop, Alessandro thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The mistakes, the lies, the manipulation, the confrontation, the separation, the regret, the change. He had learned that true love couldn't be forced, bought, or controlled. It could only be freely offered and freely accepted. Isabella looked at him and smiled. What are you thinking about? I'm thinking that this is the first day of the rest of our story, he said. And this time, we're going to write it together. Together, Isabella agreed. And there, on a sunny September afternoon, in a simple square in the heart of Sao Paulo, Alessandro Torriani and Isabela Santos began again. Not as the powerful CEO and the vulnerable florist, but as two people who had learned that true love begins with respect, grows with trust, and blossoms only when both hearts freely choose to surrender. Some loves are born from passion at first sight. Others are born from second chances. And the strongest of all are born from the courage to change, the strength to forgive, and the wisdom to start anew. 2 years later, the small church of Sao Benedito was decorated with simple yet breathtaking arrangements. White roses, yellow lilies, and lush green foliage that Isabella had chosen herself. They were flowers that spoke of new beginnings, of purity reclaimed, of a love that had weathered the storm. Alessandro waited at the altar, as nervous as a teenager on a first date. He wore a simple suit with no ostentatious labels and a navy blue tie that Isabella had picked out. When the church doors opened and Isabella appeared in her simple but elegant wedding dress, Alessandro felt tears sting his eyes. Not because of her beauty, though she was radiant, but because of the journey that had brought them here. Isabella walked down the aisle alone, just as she had insisted. She was an independent woman who had chosen to be here out of love, not need or pressure. When she reached the altar, she extended her hand to Alessandro. Ready for our greatest adventure? She whispered. Ready, he replied, this time the right way. Father Miguel, who had guided Isabella through her most difficult times, smiled as he began the ceremony. Alessandro and Isabella have chosen to write their own vows, he announced. Alessandro took a piece of paper from his pocket, then put it away. Isabella, he began, his voice thick with emotion. 2 years ago, I thought love was about conquering. You taught me that love is about choosing. Every day, I choose you. I choose to respect your strength, to celebrate your independence, to support your dreams. I promise to never again try to control your life, but only to share it. And I promise that the man you are marrying today will always be better than the man you met yesterday. Isabella smiled through her tears. Alessandro, you taught me that second chances can be stronger than first impressions, that people can truly change when they truly love. I promise to always be honest with you, to always keep my own identity while we build our identity together. And I promise that the love I feel for you has grown not in spite of our hardships, but because of them. When they kissed as husband and wife, the few guests present, true friends, a chosen family, applauded not just the wedding, but the transformation of two people who had found in love the strength to become their best selves. Outside the church, Roberto handed Alessandro a small gift. What's this? Open it. Inside the box was a small golden key. The key to the flower shop you're going to open together? Alessandro looked at Isabella, confused. Isabella laughed. Surprise! I've decided to take on a partner, but this time, a real partner. 50-50. Petals and Dreams is becoming Petals and Dreams Limited. Isabella, are you sure? I am. I've learned that independence doesn't mean doing everything alone. It means having the choice. And I choose to build our dreams together. Alessandro kissed her right there, in front of the church, as rose petals fluttered in the wind. Some happy endings are given as gifts. Others are earned through struggle, growth, and the courage to love truly. Alessandro and Isabella had chosen the second kind, and they had discovered it was infinitely better.